What's up, everybody? How's it going? Back in saddle again, the Plant Guard now. Day two of Vegan Week over here at the Vanguard Casa, so enjoying that. And we've got a motherfucking good show for you guys today. We're going to be talking to Matthew Ho because we're officially, I believe, 1 week away from the midterm. So he's going to be talking about his candidacy and why there is another option for people of North Carolina other than the, corporate duopoly. So we'll be chatting with him about that. We're going to react to a good friend of the show, Olayemi Olurin, on none other than The Breakfast Club, dropping some serious truth bombs about the police and prisons. And I think we're also going to get into a little bit of Elon Musk Twitter cringe. So that's going to be awesome. How you doing today, guys?
Doing well. Super excited to be back. Yeah, we have a great show for you guys today. Really excited to be chatting with Matt Ho for, I think, the third time on the Vanguard. One of my favorite third-party candidates in a while. He's from the Green Party running in North Carolina for the Senate. So super excited to chat with Matthew. And yeah, super excited to break down our good friend Olayemi's recent appearance on the Breakfast Club as well. Super proud of her for going on there and speaking the truth. And then, yeah, excited to break down some of the recent developments too as it relates to Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, which has been pretty amusing to watch unfold up to this point. We do want to quickly shout out our patrons before we introduce our guest to the stream and get our interview underway. So a huge shout out to all our patrons. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you are interested in supporting our show and joining our patron community, the link is going to be in the description of this video. It's always going to be in the description of all of our video and live stream content. So hit that up if you're a fan of the show, if you enjoy our perspective and want to see more. We wouldn't be able to do this program without you guys. So thank you so much for your support. And obviously, if you're not able to support us on Patreon or financially via PayPal, which is also in the description, we really just appreciate if you hit that like button. It's a great way to support the show as well, totally for free. Helps us beat that algorithm, helps us get some more comrades in the chat, some more eyeballs on the live show, which again, we're about to have a super important conversation with Mr. Matthew Ho. So if you hit that like button now, we can hopefully get some more viewers on that discussion. But yeah, anything else you wanted to intro with, Zach, before we get the man of the hour in here?
No, let's go ahead and get Matthew in here. Excited to chat with the guy.
Yeah, without further ado, Mr. Matthew Ho, North Carolina Senate candidate. How you doing, Matthew?
Good, guys. How are you all?
Dude, good, doing well. Good to see you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. So I guess this is the big week. It's all ramping up to next Tuesday. Obviously, we've had you on our show before. You're Green Party candidate. You stood in opposition to the corporate duopoly and the Senate choices in North Carolina, and they've played it completely fair, right? Everybody was super by the book in this election. If you could just catch everybody up to speed with all the hurdles and just criminal activity, dare I call it, that was thrown in your way to prevent you from making it to Tuesday.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've actually, here in North Carolina, we have a pretty good early voting period. It started over a week and a half ago. So we have 2 full weeks of early voting before Election Day, which is really great. I mean, it's the way we should be doing things. We need a ton more reform, of course, and reform is a polite word of saying that what actually has to be done, I think, for our electoral system. But, with us, so for the North Carolina Green Party, for people who aren't aware, we weren't on the ballot. We were not a recognized political party in North Carolina. And to become one, we had to go out and collect signatures. And the state required us to collect 14,000 signatures. We collected 22,500 signatures. We met every deadline. We checked all the boxes. We turned our things, our signatures on time. And on the final day, the State Board of Elections, and the State Board of Elections is controlled by the Democratic Party because we have a Democratic governor. So the State Board of Elections is comprised of 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And on the final day, in a partisan vote, the State Board of Elections refused to certify us because they said they had questions about our petitioning process. They didn't provide any legal justification. They didn't allow us any due diligence. They provided no evidence. They just simply said, the Democratic side of the State Board of Elections, which controls the State Board of Elections, said, we have questions and we can't certify you because of those questions. And so we ended up having to file a lawsuit in federal court. The Democratic Party, actually the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, so Chuck Schumer's group, joined it as a co-defendant. They intervened and the judge put them in as a co-defendant. So we were in court against both the state of North Carolina and the DSCC, and we won in U.S. District Court. The same time too, because we had such great media coverage, including coming on, shows like yours, right? We had a ton of great media coverage. The State Board of Elections took the better part of 3 months, or a better part of 2.5 months for their investigation. This whole process took about 3 months from us. But what they did was they had to conduct this investigation where, in an unprecedented move, they had all the county boards of elections go back and check our signatures. They were so desperate to find anything to keep us off the ballot, and they couldn't. So the State Board of Elections had to reverse itself because it knew it was going to lose in federal court. So they reversed themselves, certify us, and then the federal court put us on the ballot because what they had done by not certifying us back in the end of June was they basically kept us off the ballot because the deadline was July 1st. So the federal court said, well, that deadline doesn't count any longer. We're putting these Green Party candidates on the ballot. The DSCC actually, again, who was a co-defendant because they intervened, they put themselves into this thing purposely. They filed an appeal in federal court, which they lost in federal appeals court. And then the North Carolina Democratic Party have filed a lawsuit in state court, which they ultimately dropped because they knew they had no evidence. There was no way they were going to win anything. So, but that's what we were up against. And it took the better part of 3 months for us. We turned in, or we finished collecting our signatures on May 17th. And we were not free and clear of the legal process, the courts, the State Board of Election, fully able just to concentrate on campaigning until I think it was August 21st when the North Carolina Democratic Party dropped their lawsuit in state court. So we lost the better part of 3 months of campaigning. I mean, the purpose of this was to keep us off the ballot. But there was a branch to that, or a subset of that plan of theirs that was just to exhaust us, to use up our resources, to keep us tied up. And when you're a small campaign, a grassroots campaign, that's exactly what happens. So we didn't start really campaigning until the last week of August. And that really matters. Looking back on it now, me and my folks will see like, wow, if in July or August, where we're at now would have made a difference. But this is what we're up against. And what it did was validate why we're doing this. When we say the two-party system is corrupt and undemocratic and harmful, this is what we're talking about. Ballot suppression or ballot access restrictions are a form of voter suppression. And that's certainly what we've been up against. And, it's not because they were afraid of me or afraid of the Green Party. It's that they don't want the issues that we represent to be on the ballot because that threatens the profits of their donors.
Well, what's it been like campaigning since August? What kind of responses have you gotten from the voters of North Carolina? Because this is a little bit of an overlooked Senate race. I feel like, there's been a lot of national attention on Pennsylvania and Ohio and a few other states. I haven't heard as much headlines about the North Carolina Senate race. So I'd be really interested in the kind of reception you got from, just normal working class people of North Carolina, Democrats, Republicans, independents, whatever. What were they saying to the ideas that you were presenting, and what do they feel about voting for a third-party candidate in this midterm election, which has so many people talking about, are the Democrats going to control the House? Are the Republicans going to control the House? I feel like a lot of people in this day and age just vote either Democrat or Republican so that their preferred party controls the House. What kind of pitch were you making to people as a third-party candidate?
We met people where they were at. I mean, so we attended festivals and events. I mean, we did our best to get out to people. I mean, again, the third party, independent, grassroots, you're limited with your resources. So for any candidate, your challenge is, how do you get people to know you exist, right? And if the first time someone sees your name is when they're marking up their ballot sheet, they're probably not going to vote for you. I might get something because it's a protest vote or because I've got a funny last name or something like that, right? But the idea that you're going to be able to inform people who you are, it's a real challenge because that depends so much on money. For us, there's 7.3 million registered North Carolina voters. How do you get them to know that we are an option and that we represent working families and we represent Medicare for all and rent control and living wages and ending the war on drugs and, a Green New Deal and all those sorts of things? I mean, how do you get people to know that? I mean, so we've done a bunch of things, but one of them is just getting out there. And one of the things interesting, guys, is that when you're out there meeting people, they're shocked. They're shocked that they're actually meeting a candidate, particularly a candidate for federal office, because the Democrats and Republicans don't do that. They don't typically go to events that they don't control. In some of, I've seen a couple of Republicans and Democrats running for Congress at some candidate forums that I've attended, but those have all been very tightly controlled, scripted forums where someone's not going to ask an inconvenient or uncomfortable question to them. So you get this wow, you're actually out here talking to us, and people are very receptive. It was the same reception that we found when we were out in the spring petitioning to get on the ballot. There's an enthusiasm for something different. There's enthusiasm for change, whether it's, the Green Party or not, I don't know. But there was the polls that we know, the polls that tell us 60 to 70% of Americans want third parties, 85% of Americans want major electoral change. We saw that out there. The thing being is that when you're out there at those events, when you're doing these things, when you're going out to meet people, the reality is, how many are you meeting in a day? Right? I mean, if you could be at a big festival and you could shake hands with 200 people in a day, maybe 300 people in a day. Still, the reality is only 200 or 300 people on that Saturday. And then how many can you do on a Sunday? And then during the week, where are you able? I mean, so it gets back to this idea of what are we up against here on the left in electoral politics of competing against that money. And I mean, it's you don't want to put your head in the ground and hide and say it's too hard. You also don't want to put your head in the ground and say it doesn't matter, because it certainly does matter, and you certainly don't want, I get annoyed with the people who say things like, well, you just got to do it differently, without telling you how to do it differently. That's a big, right? The folks out there with no shit, we got to do it differently. I mean, thanks. But when you look at this edifice that we're up against, the 2020 U.S. Senate race in North Carolina was the most expensive Senate race of all time at that point, $300 million. So when you come into this, that's what you're up against, and how you're going to compete against that. You got to find ways to do it asymmetrically, right? If this is an edifice that we're up against, what are the cracks that we can kind of insert ourselves into, right? And then pry open. That's how we kind of have to look at it. So for us, also to take a full step back here, and we are a new party here. We are building something. We are just laying out the foundation. I mean, that's what we're doing. So for us, what percent we get in the polls is really kind of meaningless at this point, because we're just trying to grow as an organization. We're trying to bring people in. We're trying to make sure that we have a base to build upon. I mean, we didn't have much of a network. We didn't have much of an infrastructure. So how do you just get out the vote? How do you fundraise? How do you get a call for volunteers out when you don't have those structures in place to begin with, let alone people knowing what you are? I'll tell you, 100 people, 97, 98 of them have never heard of the Green Party in North Carolina. That's what we were up against, because most people aren't on Twitter, right? Most people aren't on Instagram or watching YouTube podcasts or whatever, like many of us are, and that's what I'll say as well. The other thing that people ask me about, I can tell you of the thousands of people I've met in this last year, personally, right, face to face, I've had maybe 3 people total bring up the whole spoiler, you're splitting the vote kind of thing. On Twitter, I get it every day. In real life, I get it 3 times in 9 or 10 months of running a campaign where we have done everything we can to be out as much as possible. What we get when we're out talking to people, it's healthcare, housing, and drugs. I hear that everywhere. Healthcare, housing, and drugs.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
I think we both just wanted to leap on that. Could you talk a little bit more about that? What you are hearing from the people on the ground, because I think that's really interesting. Because Gavin and I try our best to get out of our bubble in Kansas City. We go out and we talk to real people. But as it stands, we are leftists that are on the internet. Gavin and I are like terminally online. We're kind of like employed to be. So what is it? What are people talking about? And more importantly to me, how are they talking about it? Right? When somebody talks to you about like the problems that are coming in the form of drugs, are they pretty skeptical of the incarceration rhetoric, or are they falling into the new, massive push by right wing and liberal media to say that we actually need to ramp up our carceral state even more to combat that? I'm just curious what the framework that a lot of these people are operating with is when it comes to those issues.
It certainly is a skepticism and a cynicism born out of the reality of their experiences or their neighbors' experiences or their community's experiences. What we would do at these events is we would be tabling, of course, and we'd have our banners and table and buttons to give out and all that stuff. And we always had a large sign for ending the war on drugs, because we found that was the thing that brought us to us the most. And once we start talking to them, then we get into other issues. But again, it's healthcare and housing that really came up the most of the other issues. But it was the ending the war on drugs, legalizing marijuana, legalizing narcotics, converting it from a criminal, a law enforcement to a public health issue. Right. That's what really got people. And you would have, I mean, sometimes depending upon the event you're at, and depending upon, depending upon the audience, the demographic at that event, you'd hear a story once an hour from somebody about the war on drugs, whether it's the incarceration piece or the overdose piece. A lot of times it's the same thing. A lot of times it's the same. You're talking to a mom whose son OD'd and then was in jail for 6 months. And, like that kind of thing. Like you would hear those stories every time you're out. And again, sometimes depending upon the event you're at, every hour. So that was what we utilized to make that connection to people. And most people on my team have that experience. We all have people who've OD'd in their lives. We have neighbors who've gone to jail. I'm a combat veteran. I've been in rehab and treatment with a ton of combat veterans who have OD'd, gone to jail, or both. Because that's the reality of circumstances for them. And then, of course, depending upon what group you identify with or who you come from, where your experience is coming from, you have your own stories. So that's what we would get. And then again, the healthcare and the housing. Another issue that I hear about a lot would be transportation. So you're at these candidate forums. I go to every candidate forum I can possibly go to. And, you get these questions. And a lot of times it was about transportation, because in most of North Carolina, if you don't have a car, you're not getting anywhere. So if your car breaks, you're not getting to work. You're not getting to school. You're not getting your kids to the doctor, whatever it is you need to do, So, for me, people have heard me spoke before. These are the issues that pushed me into doing this. I took part in the wars for which there's been no accountability for, right? Wars built on lies, completely counterproductive. It just enterprises of organized murder for which there's been no accountability for, right? There's been no action on the climate. None, right? Just a strengthening of fossil fuel handouts, basically, is what we've seen. And, as well as, too, we've had a parade of financial crashes, recessions that have just destroyed it. Those things have destroyed some families for generations, not just for years, but for generations. And the banks and the corporations just got bailouts and tax breaks and subsidies, and they're all making record profits. And 60% of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Right? So those things, but then also too, in my life, the healthcare, the housing, and the drugs, I've already talked about, had a lot of people in my life. I know a lot of families who've lost 6, to be specific, 6 families I know that have lost people to overdoses. But then also too, the housing, both the houses across the street from me got bought by corporations, and the families that they were renting those homes had to move. I don't have kids. I had no trick-or-treaters because the kids lived in those houses, and I don't have kids on my street anymore. So I no hit trick-or-treaters last night, right? And then the healthcare, I've got people in my life, people I love very much who, they aren't getting the healthcare they need because they can't afford it. Because in North Carolina, an affordable healthcare plan, the kind of thing the Democrats tout, is $250 a month with an $8,000 deductible. Right. So how do you afford that? If you make $20 an hour, which is a great wage here in North Carolina, most people don't. Most people make I think the median in North Carolina is 16. So most people aren't. So you're spending a third of your income on your healthcare insurance. So, it's those things. And so for me, it personally was, for me to be out there talking to people and being met back with these same issues, it meant a lot to me. And I think it meant a lot to people we spoke with. But again, how many people were we physically able to speak with as compared to being able to broadcast to a larger audience?
Interesting. Well, when we talked to Jesse Ventura, who's one of the few candidates in recent American history to win a high-profile race as a third-party candidate, of course, that being the governor of Minnesota back in the late 90s, he said that one of the most important elements of his success in that race was his ability to get on the debate stage and really
Yeah.
bring his message to the people that way. And the I think 3 televised debates that he was able to participate in. And I did notice that there was recently a North Carolina Senate debate between Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd, the Democrat and Republican candidates, but that yourself and the Libertarian candidate Shannon Bray were excluded from that debate. Could you talk a little bit about, why you guys were excluded from that debate and how there's all these systemic challenges, including exclusions from televised debates for third-party candidates like yourself?
Yeah, and we've had no media attention. We had a ton of media attention over the summer when we were fighting with the state and with the Democratic Party. And a lot of that, and we had a lot of national media attention. The AP ran 5 national stories on it. They ran overseas stories on it. NPR had 3 national stories on our situation here. A lot of it, you look back now and you see, well, it was framed as the Green Party is committing fraud, which of course was completely true. The only fraud that occurred were the allegations of fraud against us. So, once we were on the ballot, the media attention completely dropped. And before I ran, I've been in local media here. The major newspaper in North Carolina, those 3 of the 4 major newspapers are all under the same banner: the Charlotte Observer, Raleigh News Observer, and Durham Sun Herald. But I had like 3 op-eds in that thing before I ran. And, before I was a Green Party person, I was someone they were willing to give a voice to. But once I put on the Green Party mantle, and the same thing too with all kinds of other local media, we just have not been included. And same with the Libertarians. And we expected that. I expected that. That's how it works. It's visceral, of course, going through it, where you're feeling it. It's emotionally something. It's very frustrating, and it's deliberate in the same way that, but there also too is there's the state of the media is so horrific right now, where they just go along with the fact that the candidates, the Republican Democrat candidates, will refuse interviews. They dictate all the terms to them, and the media goes along with it. So you have this crisis with the establishment media, the corporate media, where it really is complicit with the political operations of the campaigns and the major parties. And this is a really dangerous thing, because this is how many people still get their information, particularly people who are make up the bulk of voters. And that's something that's changing, though. The thing that gives me hope, I've said this to you guys before, is what you guys are doing. This type of technology, this kind of media, several years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. 10 years ago, it definitely was not possible. 5 years ago, it would have been very shaky to do this, right? It wouldn't have, and now we're at this position where we can have this type of independent media because of the technology we have. And that gives me a lot of hope, because we don't even know what we can do with this yet. Our ability to communicate, to coordinate, to inform people, to mobilize people, right? All that can come through platforms like yours and what you all are doing. And so that is really important. And I think that's what's going to make a difference for us in the future. But right now, we're still dealing with a lot of legacy type of media. And it's a real issue for us, because how do you, again, it gets back to this question: how do you get people to know us? How do you get people to know about us? And so, but we were kept out of debates. It's kind of funny. We were given the opportunity. Shannon Bray and I were given the opportunity to do interviews so the debate was on Spectrum News Channel, which just, right, that in itself is an issue, right? Because they do the debate on Spectrum News Channel, which I think less than 1 in 3 North Carolinians has Spectrum cable. So you would have had to find the debate on the internet, watch it on the website that was available, but that's not easy. And that's not, and they did the debate at 8:00 on a Friday night. And so what I was told is that less than 2% of voters in North Carolina watched the debate anyway. So they had us on a pre-debate interview, but then what they did was, so there's a pre-debate interview show. This kind of encapsulates it all. So Shannon and I were interviewed, and they also had these college professors on who were giving like their analysis, all very conventional wisdom type of thing. And they had a couple of college students on who gave their perspective. The next day, when you go to their website, my and Shannon's interviews are not on the website, but the full discourse by these college professors as well as these college students are posted on the website, right? So they'll go that far where they won't even post your interview with them on their website. And we see this too in the candidate forums. We've had a number of candidate forums that have mysteriously been canceled last minute, and the same circumstances beyond our control, right? So you have this belief as well. And when you see who's hosting these candidate forums, well, these are kind of Democratic Party aligned candidate forums. And the libertarians will tell you the same thing on the right when they go to their candidate forums that are sponsored by, Burke County for gun liberty or whatever. Like all of a sudden, when they find out the libertarians coming to it, the forum gets canceled. So you have that. So the tentacles of all this, right? The Leviathan that we're up against here, as you guys know, is very real. The experience, again, it's visceral. So I guess that's maybe why I'm a little more excited about it than I should be. Because if you asked me a year ago, I would have said, yeah, this is going to happen. That's going to happen. We're going to get no media. Certainly, they're going to shut us out of forums. They're not going to let me in the debate. You kidding me? Like that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I really appreciate the fact that you think that Gavin and I are contributing to, the left movement in any way. That's certainly a hot take. I did want to follow up and say that as a third party Green candidate, right? Do you think that it plays any role how just massively unpopular and just what a huge failure Joe Biden has been as a presidency since he's taken the presidency? I mean, there's been a lot of reporting about how the whole strategy with the Senate race has been to just hide Joe Biden. They're still trying to run against MAGA politics. They're still trying to run against Stop the Steal. They're still running against all these kinds of things. And they're not meaningfully addressing the economy, healthcare, certainly any of the actual issues that are going to be afflicting voters in North Carolina. Does that create a lane for you to go in there and say, hey, the Democrats are going to offer you nothing. You already know that. The Republicans might offer you something, but it will be bad for you. Here's what we could actually do. Does that open the door for people who would have maybe been, blue no matter who, I'm not even interested in dealing with a Green Party candidate? Does that open the door for them, or is it, still, closed?
No, there certainly are people who are looking for something, for an alternative. You have those who are bound, their identity is bound up in their political party. Just like I'm a Mets fan, there's no way you're ever going to get me to cheer for the Phillies. Absolutely not. Right. I mean, it's that type of identity that you can't even, it's not rational. It's completely irrational. Right. Like a lot of parts of being a human being, right. Completely irrational. And that's how a political affiliation or identity is for a lot of people. It's who they are. They're red or they're blue. And so those people, but you have to remember, we have a lot of people that have been disaffected. A lot of people have been turned off by the system. I go all the time to the numbers. 10 million 2012 Barack Obama voters voted for Trump in 2016. I mean, you have people who are searching, right? People are searching. Biden has been, Sherry Beasley, my Democratic opponent, she has been keeping Joe Biden at arm's length. The couple times he was in the area, she was in another part of the state, right? Meanwhile, Ted Budd, my Republican opponent, has warmly embraced Donald Trump, has done appearances with him and everything else. And where it was a close race here in North Carolina a month or so ago, as Bud has increased his use of Donald Trump and MAGA and those kinds of things, Bud has opened up a lead. And now most people think that Bud will win. It will be close, but that Bud will win by a couple points, 2 or 3 or 4 points. That's what most expectations are. But I mean, for us, it does, because I actually live in one of the few parts of North Carolina that has a competitive state Senate and a competitive state House race. And so I get 3 or 4 mailers a day in my mailbox. And the Democratic Party mailers that are coming, particularly from the guy named Terrence Everett, who was what looked like a good progressive in the state house, very vocal on marriage equality in North Carolina several years ago when that was not an easy thing for Democrats to do, kind of shows who they are. But now his mailers are all very much about public safety, family values, trafficking. We're going to lower costs. All these types of things that if you had gotten it before, you'd be like, this is coming from a Republican. And that's how Sherry Beasley, the Democratic senatorial candidate, that's how she has run most of her campaign, is on those same things too. Again, that Republican, that desire by the Republicans to take a portion of the Republicans, going back to what Schumer said in 2016, right? For every blue collar vote we lose in the middle of Pennsylvania, we'll pick up 2 Republican votes in the suburbs of Philadelphia or whatever. You know, I mean, that thinking that you can do that. I will say we have seen a few things with Sherry Beasley that I think we've made an impact on, not as much as we would have liked, but that we have. I've seen her say things that we have said. Things like not allowing corporations to buy single family homes. I mean, that came out of nowhere a couple weeks ago. And, you know, I think that's something that we've been saying for a long, pushing her on that. Her stance on marijuana, although she says she does that thing where they say that she's in favor of legalizing cannabis without defining it. So cannabis can simply just mean CBD in their lexicon, right? You see them do that, but at least she's stating it very clearly and openly. She's not going to end the war on drugs, but I think we have pushed them on a little bit. But for the most part, they've been, to your point, focused on trying to get the Republican votes, the Republicans that are disaffected by the Trump part of the Trump part of the party. What's interesting here, and I don't know if it's happening where you guys are, but No Labels Party, which has got Joe Horgan and Joe Lieberman, Larry Hogan as their party chairs, is here getting on the ballot, and they're well on their way to do it. They'll do it. And our former governor, Pat McCrory, who is a Republican and who lost in the primary to Ted Budd, and McCrory represents those non-Trump Republicans, is the No Labels Party chair for North Carolina. So they're very serious. And from what I understand, No Labels has about $75 million in its budget to get on ballots around the country. And the same thing too, Andrew Yang, if you look what Andrew Yang's Forward Party did this past summer, when they linked up with those 2 other organizations, they brought in a ton of very serious big tech, finance, military, and intelligence types that were formerly Republican Party and left because of Donald Trump, as well as very conservative Democrats. And so for us, what I see happening is if No Labels and Forward Party become an actual entity in various states, well, that's everybody is now pushing the center right. I mean, it's really right wing stuff, but we'll call it center right because that's the semantics we use, right? But that leaves us the opportunity here on the left as socialists, leftists, Greens, PSL, SA, whoever, People's Party, to do something to organize and to get those people who are being left out, as you see these 4 parties fight for Wall Street and war. I mean, because that's what those 4 parties really would be all about: Wall Street, war, corporations, etc. That allows us on the left a really great opportunity to organize on the election side of things, electoral side of things, to have an impact and to represent people who are not going to be represented at all by the Democrats, Republicans, No Labels, Forward Party, et cetera.
Speaking of the Forward Party, by the way, because I've seen Andrew Yang tweet about your candidacy, or maybe retweet your official Twitter account, show a little bit of nominal support, but they put out their endorsements recently for Senate candidates, and it was Evan McMullen, who is an independent in Nevada, I want to say. Mark Kelly
and Lisa Murkowski. Yep.
Yeah, and I was wondering, because this party seems to be accurately identifying one of the big issues with our democracy as being the 2-party duopoly, and saying, you know, this isn't sustainable, this is anti-democratic, etc. I would think that they would have thrown their support behind you, a very impressive 3rd-party candidate in a state like North Carolina. But I was a little bit befuddled to see that they, in fact, did not. Did you apply for that endorsement? Did you want that endorsement, or did you not want it? Like, what was going on with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gavin. So when everything happened with us back in July and we were in our lawsuits, and I got in touch with Andrew Yang, and he was very helpful, very supportive, very interested in what was happening here, exactly what we were experiencing, what he's been fighting against, what he represents. And so at that point, the Forward Party really was only talking about democracy reform and a bit about universal basic income, and a couple other things too, modernizing government, some other things. But at about the same time when I was speaking with them, and I was going to ask for their endorsement, because their endorsement at that point was only about democracy reform? Do you support ranked choice voting? Do you want to see proportional representation? Do you want to get money out of politics? Like that kind of thing. Do you want term limits? Right. So the endorsement was, and that's what, for their existence at that point, that's all they had really cared about. And they would endorse anybody who supported that, regardless of any other aspect of platform. I was told that we only want to endorse people who are going to join the Forward Party, who will run as Forward Party members. And that was at the same time that they then linked up with these two other organizations, which names are escaping me right now. But people, Christine Todd Whitman is now the co-chair of the Forward Party. But you had people like, these organizations include people like Max Boot, Michael Hayden, Michael Chertoff. If you don't know who those three people are, look them up and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is big tech, finance, intelligence, military, all tied together. And once I saw that, I knew that Forward Party is going to have nothing to do with me and my socialist, anti-war, climate concerns. So what I find interesting, though, is that they have endorsed Murkowski, Kelly, and McMullen. McMullen's not a surprise. They've been retweeting McMullen stuff for a long time. And McMullen is, if people don't remember, McMullen got 750,000 votes in 2016. I mean, the guy's serious as an independent. And he's also very dangerous. I mean, he's a CIA guy. And I'm sure he would represent those interests fully and thoroughly. But what I find with Kelly and Murkowski, as well as they endorsed about 7 or 8 House candidates, including Abigail Spanberger, who's also CIA, who is one of the chief or the most vocal people in the Democratic Party about getting rid of the left out of the Democratic Party, right? I mean, blames the
She
squad
blew up on the
for
defund the police activists in that one leaked Zoom call or something, I remember.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yep. She blames all the woes of the Democratic Party are because of the squad, as if they're actually doing anything, right? But the so it'll be interesting to see, does that still hold? What they told me in July was that we're only going to endorse people who are going to join the Forward Party and run as Forward Party candidates. Will we see Kelly, Murkowski, Spanberger, and 6 or 7 others become Forward Party candidates the next time they're running? I know Kelly's not up right for a while, and I can't remember Murkowski's out, but the House candidates certainly are.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Murkowski won not too long ago.
Yeah, I think so. And Kelly, Kelly's, So, but will we see that, though? Right? What's that?
They're both incumbents, right? So couldn't they switch their registration in this election?
They totally
cycle?
go. Absolutely, they could. Yeah, absolutely, they could. They could. So you look at this and you see, and if you going back to No Labels, if you go to their website, they've got a video up of their 50 state party chair people. And I don't recognize most of the people, but I guarantee when they're rolling through it and they get to the Kansas person, you're going to recognize the Kansas person, right? You mean, you guys will know that person. Just like when I saw the video and I saw Pat McCrory go by, our governor, or former governor, oh gosh, they got Pat McCrory as they're serious, and no matter what you think about Hogan and Lieberman, you have to respect them in the sense that they're serious people and they can win races and they can get themselves to places. I mean, running as vice president of the United States, nothing to, I mean, as awful as Joe Lieberman is, as we can decry him as like some black-hearted little elf or something like that. He's a very dangerous person because he can get to places and do things and accomplish things, right? I mean, as well as what they represent. So again, getting back though, what opportunity does this present to us on the left? Because the Democrats looking at this, Chuck Schumer and Pelosi and Biden, all of them, Steny Hoyer, they're not going to say, well, we shouldn't compete for the same people that Forward, No Labels, and the Republicans are competing for. We should just go back to what we claim as our constituency and represent them, represent working families. They're not going to do that. They're just going to do what they continue to do, say that we're going to take them for granted. We're going to continue to provide them crumbs. What else are they going to get? And ignore them. And that gives us a tremendous opportunity on the political side.
Yeah, it does seem like the Democrats are just like re-entrenching themselves in that, like, weird like 70s, 80s style politics that saw them consistently just getting beat and beat and beat, which is just like trying to be diet Republicans, right? Like the Gary Hart style of fucking politics or whatever that brought, Reagan in and the George H.W. and all that stuff. And then I guess basically they finally won with it with Clinton, and that set off its own chain reaction. But yeah, I guess the last question I had for you, Matthew, was obviously you guys are building a big runway here, right? You talked about how you guys were starting from scratch when it came to the, North Carolina Green Party. Now you've gone through all of the work to get on the ballot. You've made so much progress in terms of name recognition and, building a presence for this party in North Carolina. Where does that go next, right? Obviously, Tuesday's a big day. You mentioned that there's been voting going on all across the state of North Carolina. But is there plans, more candidates going to run in high profile levels at Green Party and the future in North Carolina? What are you guys thinking? Is it just narrow focused on next Tuesday, or have you guys started thinking about future plans?
Well, we definitely thinking about future plans. Absolutely. And just, and for the, I saw a comment go by asking about my opinion on BDS. I fully support BDS, the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. So just to answer that from whoever asked that, thank you for asking that. Yeah, one of the things that's been important for us has been getting people experience. That a number of months ago was where I really put my head at, in the sense of the best thing we can do right now is, beside informing people about the Green Party, letting people know that there are other options, getting people to think about voting not as the two-party construct, but as being something that's more open. And certainly, again, the coming of No Labels, the coming of Forward Party, the Constitution Party will be on the ballot here as well. I mean, that's a far right party, but that only helps us. It's only a good thing. I mean, the idea that you're going to have so many parties, so many candidates, that's going to put such pressure onto a system that's designed only for two parties, it's going to disrupt that system and it's going to force it to change. I mean, that's the theory we're working under, right? But that's where our strategy delves from. And so for us, it's been about getting people experience as much as anything else. We need to make sure people can run campaigns. We need people who know how to deal with the State Board of Elections and the Federal Elections Commission. We need treasurers. We need media people, right? I mean, we need all kinds of different levels of skills and expertise and technical know-how for a campaign or multiple campaigns to be successful. And certainly we do. We are talking to people about running in the future. And, we've got 3 candidates running in North Carolina this year, 2024, 6 or 7 candidates, right? I mean, and it grows exponentially from that. But you can't do that unless you have the support, unless you have the base. And that includes networks. I mean, unless you have county chapters. How do you have events? How do you do anything? How do you make sure you know what's going on in the various counties? We've got 100 counties in North Carolina. How, as a statewide party, do we know what's going on in the state unless we have people throughout the state, right? I mean, so that kind of thing, but then also fundraising networks, and everything else, as well as, what we went through this summer trying to find an attorney who will represent us, that kind of thing. All the things that you need operationally, yeah, we're putting that place. And there are people here building the Green Party before, so I don't want to step on any toes or so we're building upon that. Those folks had gotten us to the level where we were able to put together a statewide ballot access campaign, which is no small thing. And we did that. And now running the statewide campaign, the idea is, okay, now that opens it up. And as we bring more people in, we're getting the experience they need, we can start really getting, trying to represent those working families that we say we're going to represent. And the big thing for us, where you'll see whether or not what I'm saying is just a bunch of, me just running my mouth or not, is what we do in between the election years, right? What we do in 2023, what we do in 2025, what we do in 2027, that's what matters, right? And so we have to be out there. We have to build networks. We have to collaborate. We have to coordinate. We have to work with as many groups as we can, build alliances, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. Well, we love chatting with you, Matthew. Super, super impressed by your campaign. I think it's been a really issues-based, substantive campaign, a real alternative to the two-party duopoly. I'm glad that you mentioned that the existence of these other parties, the Forward Party, the whatever the other one was called party, yes, they're adding other options, but let's be honest, if those candidates get elected, they're basically just going to maintain the status quo. They're not really going to fight back against the establishment or the military industrial complex or the fossil fuel industry in the way that Green Party candidates are. And, it's so important that you're bringing these issues to the table and really giving people of North Carolina an alternative to the Democrat and Republican candidates. So again, thank you so much for coming back. We look forward to chatting with you again, whether or not you win or lose this race. And, really appreciate you stopping by, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm actually going to vote now.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
going to go vote now. I mean, there's no reason to do it on election day.
Are you gonna vote for yourself?
That yeah, just go. I mean, this is what we should be doing. We should be just because they did it 250 years ago does not mean we have to do it now, right? It's like Thomas Paine said, government is for the living, not for the dead. We've got this fantasy of this halcyon period, like mythological about our past, which is, as we all know, is complete nonsense. And so, yeah, no, but I early vote whenever, but no, I'm actually, as soon as I'm done here with you guys, put my shoes on and I can actually walk to my early voting location and yeah, gonna get it
Vote
done.
for yourself?
Vote for myself. Yeah. Whatever I know about myself, I'm gonna I'm gonna suppress that and force myself to vote for myself. Yeah.
Well, great to see you, Matt. Hope you have a great rest of your campaign season and maybe get some much deserved rest afterwards. Looking forward to having you back on the Vanguard to talk more.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Thanks so much for what you do.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, great talk as always with Matthew Hill. Really appreciate the guy. I think he's so smart, really intelligent. Hoping potentially even that he runs again for another higher office as a Green Party candidate. I'm hoping the dude does well on Tuesday, but assuming he doesn't win this election, I think is a good possibility he could try to run again as a Green Party candidate, maybe even for president. I really do think he's that impressive. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes from Matthew. And as always, it's been a good time chatting with the guy.
Yeah, here's what I really like about Matthew. He is so he's serious. He's put in all of his energy into this, but he's also he's not spewing any bullshit. He's not trying to oh yeah, we're he's really matter of fact. He was like, people tell me all the time we need to do something different. Like, no fucking shit, we need to do something different. Like, there haven't been a wave of Green Party successful elections, and I like that the guy's out there. He's trying to actually make it happen. They're playing the long game. This isn't just like some chasing some internet celebrity. He's actually out there. He's putting in the work. He's interested in making the Green Party a success in North Carolina. And he's just a smart fucking guy. Even when I'm feeling extremely down on any kind of electoralism, I have a chat with that dude. And I'm like, you know what, man, you're right. We cannot put our head in the sand. We have some work to do. And you're the right guy to get it done. So I always endlessly impressed by him.
Yeah, and also I'm glad we were able to talk about how phony the fucking Forward Party is, talking about supporting third-party candidates and then endorsing Democrat and Republican Senate candidates instead of a very viable and impressive Green Party candidate in North Carolina. You'd think that would be a perfect endorsement for them if they actually cared about disrupting the duopoly. Apparently not. Either way, before we move on to our next story, I did want to shout out a couple super chats. Thank you so much, Big Cat's Corner. Really appreciate the $2. Smash that like. Thank you so much for that, Big Cat's Corner. And as everyone make sure to follow Big Cat's Corner advice and hit that like button. We'd really appreciate it, guys. It's a great way to help boost our show a little bit in the algorithm as we move on to our next segment.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you, Big Cat's Corner. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you also, Ivy by E. Really appreciate the $5. Ditching a meeting to shout out my favorite stream. Thanks for the hard work, Gavin and Zach. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of soft quitting. I kind of consider myself a pioneer in the industry. For many people who don't know, I had a job that I was doing for like the first 8 months that we had the Vanguard. But fuck if I ever did any actual work. So shout out to you, Ivy, sticking it to the man, and appreciate the kind words about the show.
Yeah, thanks so much. And also appreciate you, Emogi, for the $2. Ho for president 2024. Like I said, man, if he doesn't win the Senate race, I think he'd make a great presidential candidate for the Green Party. He does a great job articulating the message of the third party movement and of why it's necessary to present this alternative to the two-party duopoly and the corporate oligarchy, which controls said parties. So yeah, really impressed by Matthew, hoping he runs for president as the Green Party candidate in 2024 if he doesn't win the Senate race. But either way, always appreciate chatting with Matthew.
Oh yeah, I fucking vote for the guy for president. I mean, that guy, he's on the money, right? He had no problem just being like, oh yeah, no, that was bullshit. Did you see they got Joe Lieberman, X, Y, and Z corporate as fuck people? That's not for me. I'm never gonna be one of those people. Let's move on. Like, there was no even equivocation about it. There was no, well, Yang's a good guy, and I've had some no, I disagree with that. Like, Yang could be the nicest guy in the world, but it's not going to impact my decision to, change my staunch opposition to the corporate duopoly. Like, it's not going to happen. I like that about the guy.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for the super chats, guys. And let's move on. We were going to talk a bit about our good friend of the show, Olayemi Olurin, who you guys might have seen on The Hills Rising. She's a public defender and a really awesome up and coming lefty commentator. Again, big fans of Olayemi's content over here at the Vanguard. And she was actually just on The Breakfast Club. I know you got a chance to check out the full episode, Zach. I've only seen a couple clips, so I'm excited to break this appearance down and watch some of the highlights. But do you have any thoughts on this before we take a look?
Yeah, shout out to you, Ole. I was pumped when I saw this because I like the Breakfast Club. Like, I'll just listen to the Breakfast Club. I mean, obviously, right? So when I was like, oh shit, Ole's getting on the Breakfast Club, this is gonna be tight. So I woke up this morning. That was like the first thing I did was I listened to this, and she crushed it. And also shout out to Alec Sanis. I fucked that up so bad, worse than the host on the Breakfast Club did. So apologize to that guy, Alec. Super smart guy. We're going to react to some of him on the show today. I figure we could kick it off with a clip that you've probably seen, Gavin, and that was one that Olayemi tweeted out this morning. So I'm going to pull that guy up real quick. Oh, perfect. Yeah, let's go ahead and watch that guy first, and then I have a few other ones for you to for us to dig into. But yeah, she says they don't make prisons to be rehabilitative for a reason, and let's hear why.
Believe in prisons. I can never say we shouldn't have prisons, but why don't they make them actual correctional facilities? Like when they go there, they can get learn some type of trade. They can get proper mental health services. You know, they can get actual tools.
System. Because it's a profit system. That's the reality, right? Like when you say mass incarceration and slavery, people think that you're just trying to make a moral appeal or you're trying to condense something. But no, in actuality, if slavery is a system by which we deprive people of their freedom and their personal liberty and we force them to work for another's gain, right? We have over 2 million people that are incarcerated in America. 400,000 of those people are being held pre-trial. Those people in private and public prisons produce over $11.6 billion in goods for the country. Their families and fines and fees associated with the convictions and costs are in over $27 billion of debt. That's why, because they're there to provide a service. They're not there. If we're funneling, when you think about it, right, we're funneling the exact same under-resourced communities through the prison system. This whole idea that the police are there to protect and serve, or that mass incarceration is there for our benefit. We spend over $277 billion on prisons and policing every year, and another $80 billion just on prison. And yet we say every year this is not any safer. We're not safer. The place is more dangerous, but it's the same communities. How come the most safe communities are not the most police communities? Why are they the most under-resourced communities repeatedly? And it's for what Alec was talking about. It's not just the fact that prison takes you away and it destabilizes you, but it also warehouses you amongst the worst social ills. We all know suicide is the leading cause of death in prisons. Thousands of people commit suicide, and it's over 76% of the people that commit suicide in prisons and local jails, they are held for less than a week. So this is like heinous, obvious, terrible.
Think about that really quickly, guys. Think about how fucking horrible it must be inside of a place like Rikers Island, where 76% of the suicides occur within 7 days. You are thrust into this environment and it kills you by destroying your mental health in 7 days. Just insane.
Jails, they are held for less than a week. So this like heinous, obvious, terrible system. And we know this and we recognize it, but yet we continue to put all the money there and not into people, because it's not there about rehabilitating them. We know that, because if you warehouse them, they go back into their communities with all of the same terrible things that they've learned, all the violence, all of the things you claim to be condemning. All it does is guarantee, if I have fines, fees, and everything associated, I'm already the most impoverished community, and now I'm in further debt. What happens? That's right. So that's why.
It's like Chris Rock says, the money's not in the cure, the money's in the treatment.
Exactly.
Also, do they have I always think this is interesting. Do they have a fucking handheld cameraman roving around the studio for these interviews, zooming in? I always just is there not just stable camera setups at the Breakfast Club?
Yeah, it is very office energy. Somebody's actually there, giving you the full on. I don't know. I've never recorded at the Breakfast Club, but it is always like that. Yeah, that's interesting though. And yeah, I mean, just first, I wanted to cap that one off because that's obviously a great point. And I wanted to play that because I think that Charlemagne's asking a question right there that a lot of people would ask, right? Charlemagne is obviously a dude that believes in police reform. You know, he wants to see an end to police brutality, obviously. You know, he's a black man in America. But, you know, he's at the beginning, he starts it off with, I can never say I don't want prisons, right? And to me, that kind of resonated as like something that I could imagine, like, somebody I know, or that, somebody like my old man that, like, is coming around to these kinds of things. But whoa, getting rid of prisons, like, that's a leap too far. But why the fuck don't we actually have prisons that work the way everybody thinks they should, where it's like, hey, you go there and it's not like a human warehouse of fucking torture and depravity. It's like, hey, you go there and now you fucking can fix the car when you leave, or like you can fly an airplane, or you could, do any number of skills, be a teacher, fucking, whatever, right? Be rehabilitated, and do something with your life that's not, just permanently fucking you. And I thought she did a great job of saying there's absolutely no interest in making that a reality, that all prisons serve to do is create more recidivism and to make profits for the people who benefit from the plight and suffering of basically modern day slavery.
Absolutely. And I'm also seeing some comments of people being like, the Breakfast Club isn't like lefty enough, or Charlemagne's a fraud, or whatever. I think it's super important that people like Olayemi take her message of abolition to a platform like the Breakfast Club, chat with the high profile host like Charlemagne the God. You can think whatever you want of the Breakfast Club crew. I don't necessarily watch it myself much. I don't, really care about Charlemagne's specific political opinions. But it's super important that lefties like Olayemi bring their message to platforms like the Breakfast Club, because that's what normal people are watching. So many lefties have this purist mentality where they only want to talk to people that agree with them on like 99.9% of all issues. But in that case, we're never going to spread the message to the people that really need to hear it most, the people that really need to be exposed to it most. And that is people like Charlemagne, who, as you said, Zach, is himself a little bit wary of this whole idea of abolish prisons. Like, let's not get crazy here. Like, that sounds wild. Okay, well, let me explain that to you in a calm, rational, and, very intelligent way. And that'll change hearts and minds. Seriously, that's the only way to do it. So I think it's super important. And I'm really, really glad that Olayemi got the invite to come on this big platform and spread her message. I think she did an awesome job, at least from what I've seen so far.
Oh, she fucking crushed it. And this is another great clip. And I 100% echo that sentiment. Look, Charlemagne the God is a capitalist, right? But he's had some bangers in the past. Who doesn't want to relive the "you're the new Rachel Dolezal" moment from when he destroyed Elizabeth Warren live on air, right? Guy had Bernie on his show and he was skeptical about him. But, he had him on. And the dude's, I feel like he's at least a fair interviewer. And if you go on a massively popular show to reach an audience and you hold your principles like Olay always does, then always that's a net benefit, right? In the same way that if you go on fucking some odious piece of shit show like Tucker Carlson, who is night and day more insidious than somebody like Charlemagne the God, as long as you are out there peddling a firm message that is a lefty message, then I do think that there is benefit in getting that out to, what may be a largely brainwashed audience. So in that same way, why would you argue against having somebody come on, have a really compelling, warm conversation about a, good, conversation to be had in, this current political climate, right? Yeah, I don't understand how you could be upset about that. But I do have another clip for us to react to, if unless you had anything else to add.
One thing I just wanted to quickly revisit before we do that is this moment on Charlemagne the God when Kamala Harris came on. This is super quick, so we'll move on to the rest of Olayemi's appearance in a second, but I did want to quickly relive this glorious moment.
Who's the superhero that's going to speak against Joe Manchin? No. I want to know who's the real president of this country. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin?
I'm sorry. I interrupted. I don't think the vice president can hear you. It's Simone. I'm so sorry, Charlemagne. We have to wrap.
She can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me, Madam Vice President?
So I'm sorry. We got to wrap. Oh. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're acting like they can't hear me.
Base.
Yeah, so that was Simone Sanders, who at the time was Kamala Harris's like spokesperson, press secretary person, coming in to save her from an uncomfortable question. It wasn't even that tough of a question either. He was literally just like, yo, who's in charge? Joe Biden? Joe Manchin? What's going on here? And they're like, shut it down. Shut it down. And I don't even think that was technically on the Breakfast Club, but that was still Charlemagne the God. Anyway, we can move on to the next clip. Did you have another timestamp you wanted to react to, Zach?
Yeah, if we pull this up right here. Basically, I wanted to play this because I'd heard Olay talk a little bit about how she got introduced to the, prison abolition. But they get asked an interesting question about why, these are two extremely smart people, very credentialed. They could be going out there and, making all kinds of money, right? but instead they're out working as public defenders. They're making the world a better place, and they're doing it, for the greater good, if you will. This is why.
Can I ask Olayemi and Alec,
Yes.
what made you guys decide to do this work in particular as attorneys?
Me? So I came to America because I wanted to be a lawyer. So I knew that when I came to America. But in college, I thought I might be a divorce attorney because I was like, ooh, drama, that might be spicy. But I was writing my thesis called Colored Bodies Matter, the relationship between our bodies and power. And I think the Ferguson protests were happening at the time. And my thesis advisor is this white lady, Dr. Kathleen Sullivan, who I love. She said it affectionately to me. She called me a gap scholar, which is someone in academia who points out a problem, but they don't necessarily have a solution or they're doing anything towards that, which is a necessary role. But I remember saying, in a criminal system where Black people are disproportionately represented and incarcerated, I feel like it's insufficient for me to go be an attorney and not do something that directly benefits my community. And I just think you're not just affected by whether or not you're incarcerated. Like, the criminal system doesn't just hurt you if you end up with a criminal conviction or you're incarcerated, but just being criminalized, going through that process, all the collateral consequences and the psychological effects of internalizing that. And I think that is better impacted if you're represented by somebody who looks like you and is going to humanize you. And just basically the only Black person in the courtroom shouldn't be the defendant.
That's right.
So just wanted to stop there. That was Ole's response. And honestly, not much to add there. She says it all pretty clearly, but just what a fucking scathing indictment of something that has to be called a justice system, or can be called the justice system, when she still has to point out that, the only Black person in an entire courtroom shouldn't be the one person that's about to be hauled off to fucking jail. Like, the entire Constitution, our entire justice system is supposed to be predicated on this idea that you will be convicted by a jury of your peers. That is supposed to instill within us a feeling of impartiality, right? Like, we are getting our due process, like we are being heard out by an impartial jury. These are literally the words that are said to you. That's obviously not the case when you're in a room full of fucking, potentially racist white people that are all deciding your fate as a impoverished Black person, right? You cannot call that a fair trial. So absolutely 100% there. And then we can keep playing it if you didn't have anything else to add, Gavin. Cool. This is going to be Alex's response next.
For me, I started my career as a public defender in Alabama, and the things I saw there really shook me to the core. The case after case after case was exclusively poor people. It was almost exclusively people of color, and they were being punished in ways that made no one safer. And I got into this work because I really care about safety. And so I started doing civil rights work a few years later. And my first civil rights case, I got a grant to start my own nonprofit, and I went back to Alabama, and I went into a courtroom. And I just think it's important for people to understand what's actually happening in these courtrooms. And this is why I do this work. I saw 67 people in that courtroom in Alabama that morning. All of them were Black. They were all chained together in the front of the room. Not a single one of them was charged with a crime. You know why they're all there? They're all there because they owed debt to the city of Montgomery, Alabama. And one by one, I watched them beg to the judge. Judge, I have 4 children at home. One of them, my children, is disabled. Judge, I've been addicted to drugs. I can't pay these tickets. Judge, I'm a homeless veteran. Please don't make me. And one by one, the judge ordered them into jail. And I went up into the jail that day and I started interviewing people. And I met this woman. She showed me her court document. Her court document said, pay us $2,807 or sit 59 days in jail. She explained to me that in Montgomery, you got $50 for every day you spent in jail. And she turned over her court document, and in pencil, she was writing numbers, 50, 50, 50, 75, 75. And she was adding them all up. And she explained to me that if you agreed to clean the feces and the blood and the urine and the mold from the floors that all the women were sleeping on top, you got an extra $25 a day toward your debt. And she was counting the days and subtracting the money, because when the police raided her home, she had her 1-year-old on her lap and her 4-year-old next to her, and they took her away from her kids because she owed traffic tickets. Wow. And she hadn't seen her kids in weeks. And that was my first client as a civil rights lawyer. And that's why I still do this work, because there are hundreds of thousands of people jailed because they can't pay tickets and debt in this country. There are hundreds of thousands of people jailed pretrial on bail just because they can't make a payment. And our society is still unsafe. And so people like Ole and I do this work because we're trying to tell people that the story you're told in the media, not just Law and Order, but also the New York Times, not just the New York Post, but also NBC. The story you're told in the media is not what's actually happening to people who are vulnerable in our society every single day in our courts.
What happened to that?
That is some shit, right? I just couldn't believe that when I heard that. I mean, imagine sitting in a courtroom and watching a group of shackled black men, line chain gang style, paraded in front of you. What the fuck does that? How far removed are we from Jim Crow? How far removed are we from chattel slavery, really? If you're going to parade a group, dehumanize these people to the highest degree, then make them plead with you. It's too much, man. Make them scrub fucking feces and blood off the fucking ground for 25 unfucking I mean, it's all unconscionable. He goes on to say, fortunately, that you know, he saw this as a massive injustice, and he immediately went and filed you know, fuck, if we could listen to him talk about it because I don't remember exactly, but he files a injunction essentially and is able to get these people out. We can play it really quick.
That young lady.
We filed, it was actually my first case. I really had no idea what I was doing. And we filed a federal civil rights case, and they released her almost immediately.
Wow.
And got back with her kids, and they released everybody from the jail, actually.
Wow.
And so
yeah, so that's what happens when you actually have to follow the law, and you can't just exploit people because of the color of their skin and their predicament. But it absolutely sickening, the kind of thing that these people are up against, and you know, just nothing but just insane admiration for, you know, guys like Alec that and Ole that, you know, are able to help liberate these people from the fucking just insane barbaric corruption and penal system that we have in this country.
Yeah, Alec's a great advocate. He was actually beefing with Anna Kasparian at one point. We covered it a little bit on the show, and we were talking about some of Anna's far-right talking points on the issues of crime and the prison industrial complex. And Alec was, you know, trying to point out to her and offer to come on the show to debate and, you know, bring this perspective to the Young Turks as someone who has been in these situations, been in those courtrooms, and has real insight into what's going on. So yeah, he's a great advocate for abolition and a great advocate for real criminal justice reform. Same with Ole, of course. So glad they got invited on the Breakfast Club to bring this message to the people. Such great communicators, the both of them. We'd love to have Alex on the Vanguard. Sorry, Alec, not Alex. And of course, we'd love to have Ole back at any time as well. But this was a great showing from both of them. So proud of them. And yeah, you're right. I mean, most people are fed this line by the media. Good people, by the way, not racist people, not irredeemable people that want to see black men imprisoned or enslaved, but people that think, oh, well, of course we need to have prisons, and of course we have to do it the way we do it now, just because they're ignorant, they're uneducated, they don't have that insight into what's actually going on in these courtrooms, in these prisons, and that's because the media doesn't show them. So a lot of people, you know, just normal folks, you can't really blame them for being so propagandized, because that is the nature of propaganda. You know, you live it, you breathe it, you see it every day on the television. That's what our politicians are telling us. And until you actually get woken up by someone who's been on the inside of that system and have seen the horrors of our carceral system, it is easy to just kind of go through life being like, well, if prison is the place where the bad people go, you know, that's we need to put the bad people somewhere. It seems like an efficient system to me, without ever really understanding or coming to terms with the reality of our system. So great work to both of them for coming on the Breakfast Club, speaking to a large audience of people, and hopefully changing some minds on the subject matter. Thank you also, Observer, for the $2. Man's on fire. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, and you know, these are the people that walk the walk, right? Gavin and I, we get up on the mic and we talk about this, but I mean, Alec is out there, you know, freeing people from fucking incarceration. Ole is out there freeing people from the predatory, disgusting carceral state. And so, yeah, I mean, not enough praise can be heaped upon them. I sure as shit was not ever going to become a lawyer, but I got a lot of respect for people who become lawyers and become, you know, defense attorneys, because that shit is so needed. And it's just clear in that example, these people were being just dehumanized in the most unreal way. $50 for your day in jail, an extra $25 for you to further humiliate yourself and degrade yourself for what? Absolutely shocking. And yet they get one person that comes in there and represents them when we're all supposed to have people that represent us. They all get out. Absolutely insane. You can't call that a justice system.
Yeah, absolutely. So were there any more clips you wanted to react to from that, Zach, or do you want to move on to our next topic?
We can move on. I think that gives everybody a pretty clear idea. It's about a half-hour discussion that they do, and I highly, highly recommend that everybody goes in. They talk about white-collar crime and why that's not prosecuted, even though it happens at an alarming rate, building code violations, lead in the water, all those kinds of things. They talk about why that's not sensationalized, but, crimes of poverty and desperation are. It's an excellent, excellent, wide-ranging conversation.
I'm excited to check out the full thing. Like I said, I haven't actually gotten a chance to watch it all myself, but I'm super excited to watch the whole thing, and I definitely urge you guys to as well. Make sure to follow Alec and Olay on Twitter as well. I think they've been posting some clips, and just in general are great follows. So check them out. Make sure to give them some love. Shout out to you, Olay, for speaking the truth on the Breakfast Club. Really cool to see. One more thing I did want to talk about. You guys have probably been aware of all the chatter surrounding Elon Musk's big takeover of Twitter. He liberated the bird, as he said. I freed the bird, he tweeted the other day, and came out with this statement the other day. There's a couple statements I want to react to, but this one to start off with. So Mr. Free Speech Elon Musk, who's pledged to make Twitter free of censorship, puts out this statement. Twitter will be forming a content moderation council with widely diverse viewpoints. No major content decisions or account reinstatements will happen before that council convenes. All right, so exactly like it already is. Exactly like they were doing it before you took over, motherfucker. Like anyone that got duped into thinking this dude was actually going to bring some, First Amendment values to Twitter and really make it a haven for free speech, got completely duped. He's literally about to reinstate the same sort of advisory council that existed beforehand, the same sort of board of censorship that existed in the previous iteration of Twitter. And why is that? Because he's afraid of the advertisers fleeing. This dude just took a massive, $44 billion L buying Twitter, a company which is not all that profitable, by the way. And is now turning around to basically reinstate the exact same sort of sensory advisory council that already existed to moderate content on the site. Because again, as much as we all like the idea of free speech, the reality is that Twitter is a capitalist corporation and they exist off of advertiser money. Got to make money for their shareholders, just like every other company out there. And as much as Elon Musk might pretend to like censorship, at the end of the day, he needs those advertisers to stick around. And if Twitter is just a cesspool of hate speech and Nazis, then guess what? They ain't going to stick around. So Elon Musk is basically, in so many words, saying, don't worry, everything's going to stay exactly the same here as far as censorship goes. It's just going to be a slightly different group of people doing the censorship. But what was your reaction to this, Zach, before we get into the next part of this, which is even more interesting and troubling for the long-term future of Twitter?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, this is what happens when you debt finance something that you can't afford, right? You immediately have to start backpedaling on all of your grand proclamations. Like now, he didn't even really want Twitter, I don't think, and he got fucking forced into buying it because he went too far down, trying to be like the hero of all of these like fucking right wingers, right? Just stroking his ego. Apparently, billions of dollars wasn't enough for him. Blah blah blah. Now he's kind of shot himself in the foot massively because he has a two-pronged problem. One, he has to start making money at Twitter. He has to turn the Twitter machine around because he just debt financed a fuck ton of money to buy it, right? So he has to pay those people back. How is he going to do that? He's going to have to try and find a way to wring out every single drop of financial gain that he can from Twitter. And that's obviously not going to come if he starts getting the Kanye treatment where all of the fucking major brands pull themselves from advertisements. Because guess what? As much as people love to say, go woke, go broke, if you go anti-Semitic, you're going to regret it.
Did you just come up with that? That was actually really funny.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to keep that in my back pocket.
Yeah, that is funny. But yeah, so basically, again, Elon Musk is about to reinstate the exact same sort of censorship board that already existed on Twitter, and which so many right wingers like himself took so much issue with. But let's take a look at the other statement he put out, which is even more interesting and is answering some questions about his plans to actually make this into a profitable company, to hopefully recoup some of those billions and billions of dollars he spent to acquire the company in the first place. And here's a thread he put out. This is interesting. I'm excited to hear your reaction to it, Zach. So first of all, let's start with this tweet alone before we get into the other ones. Twitter's current lords and peasants system for who has or doesn't have a blue check mark is bullshit. power to the people, blue for $8 a month. So again, clearly he's freaking out about how the hell am I going to make this profitable? How am I going to recoup my massive investment on Twitter? Well, maybe we can charge blue checks to have their blue check. And that's interesting because usually blue checks go to like notable public figures or organizations, right? So if you're a public figure, say I'm Barack Obama or something, I want that blue check mark because there's going to be a bunch of imposter accounts posting parody tweets and pretending to be me. So if you're a public figure, if you're someone that's part of the public conversation, you want that blue check so people know this is actually you. This isn't some imposter. This isn't some copycat account. This is actually me. He's saying now under the new system that basically anyone will be able to apply for a blue check, even if you're just like, Joe Bob McGee down the street who has 8 followers, which is interesting. I can't say that I'm entirely opposed to that idea because I do kind of like the idea of like democratizing the blue check system. I mean, I would definitely pay $8 a month for the Vanguard to be verified on Twitter. So in and of itself, not the worst idea in the world. Before we move on to the next tweet, though, what's your response to this idea, Zach?
Yeah, it's interesting. My initial reaction was that nobody was going to buy it, but then I started to think about how many marks there were on Twitter, 250,000 about after reading this tweet. Like the first thing I have to say is that it's fucking hilarious that it's actually going to be a successful marketing campaign for one of the richest men in the world, not anymore after he bought Twitter, but one of the richest men in the world to be like, overthrowing the lord and peasant system, like power to the people for only $8 to make me richer. Like the fact that is a salient argument to so many like dumb fucking bird brain people on the internet. They're like, hey, he's talking to me. Like those people, those people are all going to sign up for the $8 a month blue check. And then I think you're right. A lot of the people who just, we were talking about this yesterday, Gavin, you mentioned basically everybody that runs their business on Twitter is going to end up fucking probably paying for this verification process. And here's what else this does is this really introduces for the first time a paradigm shifting like pay to play role on true proper social media, right? Facebook, they always had the thing when you logged in. I don't know if they still have it. I haven't been on Facebook in like 8 years, but it would say like free and always will be and shit like that, because there were all these like boomers that were constantly like, share this article tonight or Mark Zuckerberg will be able to make you pay to log into your Facebook account. You guys remember all of those, right? And so then because Mark Zuckerberg knows it's like boomers that are sharing like freedom.eagle, crazy shit all over his website that keeps them nominally in business now. They were like, okay, we got to reassure everybody it's always going to be free. Elon, on the other hand, taking the exact opposite approach, saying you can pay to play. And I think he's honestly hoping that it just becomes like a flex, like a status symbol, like, you could, like X, Y, and Z and make it more like broad appeal. But I don't really have like a pro or con position on this. Like, I don't care. I wasn't verified on Twitter anyway. And, I guess we might pay to verify the Vanguard account. I guess that makes us chumps, but hey.
It's definitely interesting because, like I said, usually the point of needing to be verified in the first place is if you're a public figure or organization. If you're literally just a random private citizen with like 100 followers, I just don't really get the point of having a blue check. Like, I doubt you're going to have any imposter account outs there. It's kind of unnecessary, in my opinion, to even have a blue check if you're not like a public figure or news organization or company or something like that. So it is interesting. Again, I'm not entirely against the idea, although I will say I did see a tweet from David Hogg, who sometimes posts cringe, but I actually thought this was a decent point here that David made. He said, verified people are a major reason why many people are on Twitter in the first place. If anything, they should be paying us. Verified accounts bring people to Twitter and help with ad revenue, which is actually 100% true, because the big value in Twitter is going on Twitter and seeing an aggregate of all the different accounts you follow: news accounts, public figures, various personalities, people in the news, entertainment, media, etc. The blue check. So that is the appeal of Twitter, is going on to see an aggregate of those accounts and their tweets. And it is interesting that Twitter doesn't really have as much options for monetization as, say, YouTube does, or even Facebook. So I agree. If anything, there should be a system in place to incentivize more content creation from the blue checks via paying them, not the other way around. So I did think that was a pretty good point made by David here. But let's get back to Elon Musk's.
Oh, I will say really quickly, not to dunk on David Hogg too much after we gave him credit, but I think it might be true that he just follows Stephen King on Twitter. This was blowing up that morning also. $20 a month to keep my blue check. Fuck that. They should pay me. If that gets instituted, I'm gone like Enron. But he got into a Twitter spat with Elon Musk about this tweet earlier that morning as well.
Interesting. Well, either way, I still thought it was a pretty good point, regardless. The fact that Twitter's not paying the people that are making them successful, it's now going to be the other way around. So I get where Elon's coming from as far as like a new revenue source. But I am really interested to break down these next couple tweets. Before we do that, thank you, Kelly, for the $4.99. Musk already has plans to close the headquarters on Market Street. Now that's 20 vacant skyscrapers. Meanwhile, no public housing because homeless bad. Yeah, I actually didn't hear about that, but that's pretty crazy. And yeah, that's wild. That's 20 vacant skyscrapers. Were those all being used by Twitter? That's crazy.
Oh, I don't think they were all being used. I think it's just on Market Street. It's like wherever that place was, there's now 20 vacant skyscrapers. But if fucking Twitter had 20 skyscrapers, clarify, Kelly, that would be wild.
I was like, do they really need that many buildings to do their work? Anyway, thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate that. I'll have to look more into that. But yeah, let's go back here real quick because I wanted to discuss the other parts of Elon's plan, which I think are a lot worse than the blue check thing. Like the blue check thing is iffy, but it's not going to ruin Twitter. I do fear that the rest of his plan could actually ruin Twitter as we know it. He says, you'll also get priority in replies, mentions, and search, which is essential to defeat spam/scam. Ability to post long video and audio, half as many ads. So basically, he is announcing here that Twitter is going to be pay to play, not just to get a blue check, but to get priority in replies, mentions, and search. So basically, if you're not paying Elon Musk $8 a month or whatever, it'll probably go up over time, by the way, then you'll get buried by the algorithm in Twitter, which is already a problem for people that aren't notable accounts or verified accounts. But apparently now it's going to be even more of an issue for accounts out there that aren't paying him. You'll just get massively buried in the replies, and the algorithm is only going to promote the people that are paying to play. So basically just rigging Twitter in favor of those that can afford that and silencing the voices of a lot of the people on the platform that have kind of been given a voice by the somewhat democratic nature of the Twitter algorithm. I think this is a terrible idea if he actually goes through with it. It'll totally ruin the appeal of Twitter, which again is to kind of give a voice to those non-established accounts. And I just don't see how this could possibly be good for the company other than just to make Elon Musk a little bit of money.
Oh yeah, this is a fucking terrible idea, and that was what I was mentioning with the Stephen King thing. He was like, "This is the only way to defeat the bots and trolls," and then he has like all these like response like, "Yeah, we're defeating the trolls," and all these kinds of things. When really what you're doing is you're taking away any level of I'm trying to think of the right word here, but basically like fairness to Twitter, right? Like the idea that Gavin and I can tweet something and have it just go crazy. Like all these like interesting people who made a name for themselves on Twitter, got a platform for themselves going because people liked their takes. It's it was almost like an equalizer in some ways where it was like, yeah, you could build your own following here in the same way that YouTube was when YouTube started. So I think that this constriction of like making sure that it's only like corporate approved shit that blows up and like only pay to play things that blow up is just kind of a continuation of everything that we're seeing now that the oligarchs are firmly in control of the internet. They're trying to scale back everything that made the internet what it was, a place where you could just kind of compete based off of, I mean, I'm trying to think of what's the word I'm looking for here. You could just kind of like compete on merit, you know what I mean? And you didn't have all these restrictions. And now even with the $8 a month to verify, I think that's definitely going to become part of a broader strategy of theirs to get everybody verified on Twitter. They're going to want everybody verified on Twitter. And then what does that start to do? That starts to change the entire concept of anonymity online. What if Twitter decides that they're going to go full on down the line in 5 years, and they say you only can use a verified account? Right? That becomes like you're not allowed to make posts. You can look on Twitter, but you're not allowed to tweet anything unless your account is verified. These things could all come down the line, and it just radically alters what we understood back in the day as like a free internet, a fair internet. And it's hilarious to me because as Elon Musk does these things that will undermine everything good about the internet, people act as if he's like restoring it to like its former glory. It's absolutely Orwellian.
Right. And again, some of you guys might be listening to this saying like, well, who really cares? Twitter is a toxic hellscape. It's Twitter is not real life, all these things people say, and that's all true. Twitter does have a lot of toxic elements to it, and honestly it might be better off if it was just gone entirely. But there is serious value to Twitter as far as like journalism and news goes. It's a really good aggregate, like I said, of all of the sources you want to be following, which is really its real value if you ask me, at least from a, again, journalistic or media perspective. I can go on Twitter and I can see an aggregate of all the tweets and all the posts and all the updates from all the news sites I want to follow, all the news figures I want to follow. So even though you probably have this idea of Twitter being this very toxic place, it is a good resource to, kind of put your finger on the pulse of what people are talking about in those spaces and what your favorite news figures or media personalities are discussing. There is a lot of value to it. And I think that these kind of updates to it, again, making it more of a pay to play thing where you basically just pay to rig the algorithm in your favor is not going to help in the way that he hopes it will, and is really just a desperate attempt to make it a little bit more profitable, which in the long term could ruin the appeal in the first place of the website. So yeah, that's what I think about this. Again, it seems like Elon Musk is not actually going to make this a censorship-free place. In fact, he's going to make it more censorious, and he's going to make it harder to succeed on unless you're paying him. If he really cared about anti-censorship and democracy and all that stuff, he would rig the algorithm. He wouldn't rig the algorithm in favor of just the people that are paying him. That's super elitist. It's taking away a voice from the marginalized people on Twitter that aren't already having blue checks, that aren't already established news sources or figures, which again was a big part of the appeal of Twitter in the first place. So I just don't get how this is in any way going to help make it more anti-democratic, combat the free speech issues that we've seen on the platform. It's all just ridiculous. And again, a very transparent way to just try to make money off of something that did have some real value.
Oh yeah, it's blatant textbook right-wing marketing, right? Like, oh, let's make this seem like it's populism while we directly exploit you and you cheer for us anyway. That's exactly what's happening. I mean, he is out here operating under the guise of owning the libs, continuing to erode any kind of meritocracy on Twitter, if you want to break it down like that. But yeah, shocker there, right? Right-wing billionaire fucking decides to rip off the users of his recently purchased site and try and extract more money from them. I mean, water's wet, guys, right? Like, I mean, that was what he was going to do. You're a mark if you thought that he was going to do anything different. But yeah, shout out to you, Carolina boy. Y'all think Musk's council with diverse viewpoints will follow the right's definition of diverse viewpoints, aka just right-wingers who mildly disagree? Yeah, it's funny. It actually reminds me, I thought you were actually going to bring this up when I first read your chat. It reminds me a lot of what Rogan used to go on and on about. Like, oh, well, we shouldn't have a president. We should just have a council of elders, and it should be a bunch of dudes like Elon Musk and like, Jocko Willink and like, people who understand like each different part of it. Like we have the guys that understand business, the guys that understand the military, and we'll just get them in the room and talk it out. It's a very Aaron Sorkin understanding of American politics. Like just get all the smartest guys in the room and it'll work itself out. Or maybe all those smart guys will figure out how they can exploit the rest of the population. I imagine that's what's going to go on. You think you get on Musk's fucking council unless your number one goal is how do we turn this bitch profitable as fuck? No, that's the only conversation that they're having behind those closed doors. And Elon is such a fucking prick. Like he brought like his own fucking kitchen sink, like he's cleaning house. He fired a bunch of people. Like, I mean, the dude's a fucking ruthless boss. He's a tyrant. And yeah, anybody that would simp for him is fucking crazy to me. You don't simp for billionaires. They're all fucking cutthroat monsters. That's how they became billionaires.
What are you talking about? I hate billionaires, but love Elon Musk. You actually will hear that take in the wild sometime. It's like, oh, I'm so anti-establishment. It's kind of like the people that I hate the mainstream media, but all my favorite commentators are Fox News regulars. It's like, oh, I'm anti-establishment as fuck, but Elon Musk is the richest man in the world is going to come in and save us from censorship. Come on. Anyway, interesting new developments with Twitter. I'm definitely not a fan of these ideas. Again, making Twitter the sort of like pay to play bullshit where you can rig the algorithm in your favor if you pay them enough. It's not the appeal of Twitter. It's not the point of Twitter. I worry that it will ruin Twitter. So we'll see what happens, guys. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But don't underestimate Elon Musk's ability to fuck shit up.
Yeah, 100%. Before we get out of here, did want to say, wasn't the, biggest diehard Migos guy, but obviously Takeoff got shot last night, and that was a pretty big loss to the hip hop community. Oh yeah, did you not hear about this? Takeoff, the youngest member of Migos, was out with his uncle Quavo, who's another member of Migos, and they were out at a Houston bowling alley playing dice, and I guess some guy shot him. It was last night at a Halloween party. But yeah, I mean, that dude, like I said, I'm not like the biggest Migos guy, but it's undeniable that that dude had like one of the most insane flows in the game. Really, obviously, a pillar of the trap scene and the trap hip hop community. So, yeah, I mean, that guy, Migos changed fucking the game for popular music for a while. And, fucking just really sad to see the guy taken because, I mean, that's an artist that you're not going to get back.
I had no idea that happened. That's actually super sad.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm also not a huge Migos fan, but that's really unexpected. That's crazy. Damn. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I guess they just fucking came and like shot him like fucking straight up, and yeah, it was very sad. But anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to that and say, hey man, rest in peace. That's fucking horrible. And violence in America, gun violence in this country, I mean, it reaches people at all levels. That man was rich as fuck and he still got shot to death, right? So we have to do something to address gun violence in this country. It is a public health issue, and it can impact anybody. It can impact anybody regardless of how successful you are, and it's a real problem. And yeah, so I just wanted to remind everybody that this is still a fucking every single day people's lives are taken because of gun violence in this country. And in this case, it was a really shining star.
Damn, yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, if there's not anything else you want to talk about today, we can probably get out of here. Shout out the patrons. As always, we do like to start and end our shows with a big shout out to the patron community. So thank you guys so much for the support. Link's going to be in the description as always. If you enjoy the conversations we have here, the message we spread, the perspective we espouse, then please do consider hitting up that link in the description, guys. It really helps us out. We wouldn't be able to do the show without our patron support. So thank you guys so much for that. We sincerely appreciate it. And that is why we like to start and end all of our live shows with a big old shout out to our patron community. Again, the link's in the description. If you'd like to have your own name up there on the shout out screen, get access to our Discord server and more, hit it up, hit it up, hit it up. We really appreciate it. And if you're not able to support us financially, as we always say, just hit that like button. It's 100% for free and also a great way to support the show.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody, and we'll be back.
Yeah. Peace, guys. We'll be back.